Fire, everybody. Go. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, can you not hear me back there? I'm sorry, I can't speak up, see? If I start shouting about there being a fire, well, then I might get fined, or if I keep shouting about it, I might get arrested. I want to talk to you today about censorship. And specifically, I'd like to redefine for you what it really is to have censorship and the various kinds of censorship that exist in the world today. So censorship's a pretty simple idea, right? Certain things that you say, things that you wear, are suppressed by a given society. Pretty simple concept. But there are a lot of ways to go about doing it. Now, maybe you think that, censorship doesn't happen in this day and age. No, we're past the fascism, it doesn't happen. But in reality, there are a lot of cases of censorship that have happened very recently. Just 1 year ago, France introduced a bill that made a ban on burqas, or full headdress. If you wear that out in public, you would actually get fined. And should we be banning clothing? Should we be stopping you from wearing what you choose to go outside? Also, in Canada, in February of this year, they were proposing a law that said that you couldn't wear masks when going to protests. You would no longer be allowed to. It would be completely illegal. And now maybe you think, okay, maybe that's not going to get passed, but in fact it's already been passed. In Sweden and Greece, those laws exist. Should we be stopping anonymity at protests and stopping people from being able to hide themselves from oppression in that way? And just 2 weeks ago, in Russia, they banned Scientology literature from being published or distributed among people, claiming it to be extremist literature that you could not pass around or would be against the law. Should we be banning words and ideas and booklets, no matter what the cause? Now, I don't have the answers to those. You have to make those decisions yourselves. But there are ways to go about doing this. Now, the United States is actually pretty good about censorship, right? We don't tend to promote it. We happen to have an amendment to our Constitution that says that you shouldn't, in fact, put any laws in place to stop it. You should be able to speak your mind. You should be able to print what you want to print without any oppression or any laws against you. But as much as we laud free speech and seem to hate censorship, it's not necessarily true. Not all speech is free, right? There are certain situations where you can't speak, such as at the start of the speech. You've probably heard the famous example of shouting fire in the movie theater. In fact, it is illegal to go into a public area, and like a movie theater, and to shout fire, fire, and to make everyone disperse. The idea being that it incites panic and makes people scared and could cause a lot of violence, maybe even death. So in order to protect people's civil rights in terms of their pursuit of happiness, that law is okay, and some speech is denied. Now, whether or not you believe that that's right or not, the point stands. That is a form of censorship. That's the fact. According to the definition, that is a type of censorship. There's no question. But is it unnecessary? Do you need a law in place to stop people from doing that? Because I think that's not just censorship, it's government-enhanced censorship. And that there's different ways to go about doing it. Maybe that doesn't make much sense, so let me try to give you an example. Let's say that this law doesn't exist. There's no law in place that says you can't shout fire in a movie theater. Does that mean that people are going to go out to every movie theater and be like, yes, now I can shout fire, and then everyone's going to go out and do it? No, it doesn't mean that. No one's going to go do that. And the reason is because there are already negative implications in place against that. If I go out, or let's say Sue Young goes out to a theater, because we know Sue Young does like to go out and incite panic, and he shouts fire, what's going to happen? Well, that theater owner is going to immediately throw them out and bar them probably from ever coming back there. And if they're smart about it, they're going to exchange that list of people who shout fire at theaters with other theaters around there, and all of a sudden Soo-young's banned from 25 miles of theaters around here. No more theaters for him. Everyone in that theater is going to know this guy who did it. He's a total jerk. And if they're business owners, why would they want to sell goods and services to him for him being a delinquent? They don't want to support him. And let's say it gets even farther than that. The news starts reporting on it. And the news says, oh, this guy, he shouts fire. He's a total jerk. He's don't sell to him. All of a sudden, Soo-young feels this pressure and discrimination everywhere because of a result of his actions. Maybe his employer finds out and fires him. No more theaters. Possibly no more job. All with no government intervention involved. So what's that mean? Does that mean that there was no censorship and censorship shouldn't exist at all? No. In fact, there is censorship still there. There's still a very strong suppression for him to want to shout fire at the theater. It's just social censorship. It's censorship induced by that scariness, that feeling of not wanting other people to hate you. It's a censorship that's already in place by the people around us. That's the reason for it. So, let's say that we do live in this truly democratic society. In that case, the government and the laws put forth by it should be a form of the people. And any laws and decisions made by it are an extension of the social will. If we think that it's unethical to do something, we might put a law in place to stop it from happening. Well, that's great and all, but what happens when the social will changes? See, laws are these pseudo-permanent things. And so, let's say all of a sudden these new safety regulations come out. Now, it's really hard to induce panic at a theater. Somebody shouts fire, and nobody really dies, right? Nothing happens, no injuries, no one really hates you, they would never go as far as to hurt you or anything. It's kind of an annoyance, and people have become very apathetic to it. But the law was still in place that said, oh, you can't do that. Well, now that person's still going to get fined, they still might get jail time for doing something that the public will doesn't really care about anymore. So what happens is, when you have this government that stands for a form of censorship, laws are created and they're very sluggish. They don't necessarily reflect the public will. In fact, they become a very undemocratic thing because they aren't an extension of the people anymore. They're slow to change. They exist maybe without people even wanting them to exist. If you're going to make some sort of law about anything, but in this case censorship, it's very important to make it for very big issues. When you start having problems with every minor inconvenience, even when there's already systems in place that are against that cause a lot of negative connotations with that action, you've created a system that's going to trap people even when people don't care about it. So if I've taught you nothing else today, or made you think about that, let it be the distinction between a government-enhanced form of censorship and a social censorship. Both have their uses. What is censorship? It's suppression of your speech, of your dress, of the things you do at a protest. It already exists. Why make it worse?
Let's take a minute to write out our comments. You're going to be going after Andy now, and Chris, you're back on. You're going to be evaluating her. Thank you, sir. Do you want me to give them your book?